looking up, even when I'm down. Got my head in the clouds and my feet on the ground. I got big dreams, gonna make them true. Yes, we've got big dreams coming on at the Genius Lab. This is Toby Christensen, your self-empowerment trainer here in the Genius Lab, and we are looking up and making dreams come true. If you want to learn more about the Genius Lab, go to tobychristensen.com/the-Genius Lab. And we've got all kinds of fun stuff going on. We'll help you with your core values. We'll help you with your core beliefs. We'll help you really get in contact with ways to help you really activate the genius that resides within you. My friend from Africa always says that everyone is born a genius, and it's the job of the village to acknowledge and support the genius that resides in each and every person. So that's what we like to do here at the Genius Lab. And what I'm doing today is we are talking about we're going back to the 5 steps to claiming your power. We worked on this earlier, and I kind of blew through all 5 in one podcast. So I'm going back, and I'm going to spend time on each one. Okay. And of the 5 triggers, or of the 5 steps to reclaim your power, it's identify your triggers, or your buttons, how you get your buttons pushed. It's identifying your reaction when you get triggered or when someone pushes your button. It's about being aware of what happens to your body. You know, it's like, how do you physically react when you're in a non-resourceful state? It's turn around. How do you, once you get triggered, once you're in that fight and flight kind of phase, how do you get out of it, and how do you turn it around? And then most important, how can you train once you know how you're getting triggered? How can you train for not getting triggered in the first place? So today, I just want to focus in on step 1, which is identifying your buttons. Okay. When you hear that phrase, boy, that guy really pushes my buttons, or that situation really pushes my buttons. Okay. Obviously you don't have an external button someone comes up and pushes, or do you? It kind of seems like it. But like my big button, one of my buttons, and I'm going to tell on myself in a couple of ways here, is when I'm driving down the freeway, and I'm in almost every state in the United States, the left-hand lane of the freeway or expressway is for passing. The other lanes are for driving. So it leaves an open lane for people who want to drive like a fucking maniac like me to go fast, pass, get in, get back in, get back over, drive until you need to pass the next guy, so on and so forth. What I hate is when idiotic people get in the left-hand lane and they just like drive the speed limit. It's like, it's a fucking passing lane, guy. Get the fuck out of the lane. Get over in the driving lane to drive, and get in the left-hand lane when you learn how to use your fucking gas pedal. Okay, that's an example of what I would say. Now, the thing that's funny is I'm getting all pissed off, and my blood pressure is going up, and my heart rate is going up, and I'm screaming and yelling and cursing, and the guy isn't even in my car. He can't hear a thing. Is probably completely unaware of what's going on, and it's just one of those weird things. So I finally realized that it doesn't really make any sense to get all pissed off and crazy about this, because number 1, I can't do anything about it, and number 2, it usually doesn't end well. You know, most people that, like, if you come riding up on someone's ass, they'll just slow down. Right? They're like, fuck, get off my ass. I don't care if I'm in the left lane. Fuck you, go around me if you don't like it. You know, that's perfect. It's a perfect setup for passive aggressive behavior. And then you have the crazy people who will just pull out a gun and just be crazy psycho. And there's too much of that in the world these days. So I'm kind of avoiding the getting pissed off on the road thing. I'm doing a lot better at it, although I do get a little annoyed sometimes. But that's one of my buttons. And that's a really obvious button. That person is preventing me from getting where I want to go, and in the way and the time frame that I want to get there. So it pisses me off, and I get the fuck out of my way. I'm not gonna sit around and bother you at all. I'm just gonna blow past you if you'll just get out of my way. Okay, so the next way is a little more subtle. So there was a time in my life when I was like really stressing about money. I didn't have a lot of work. Business was slow. I'm struggling to barely get by. And a friend calls me up and says, "Hey, are you going to be home?" And I said, "Sure, come on by." The next thing I hear is this rumble and pulls in. My friend drives in a brand new Porsche 911 GTS. Okay, dude, you love my car? Check it out, man. Things have been great. I just bought it. And I'm like, oh, Toby, you're a fucking loser. You are just a broke loser because you don't have a 911 GTS. And it was really funny because I got triggered like crazy on that. Like, I am a loser. I am an unaccomplished, worthless piece of shit. But the thing that's funny is I can still be really happy for my friend. Okay? I was really happy, man. I'm like thrilled that he does so much great work and that he makes a ton of money and that he had the ability to go out and drop 130 grand on a car. That is cool. I would like to have that. So rather than get pissed off and triggered, I was very excited for him and, love the car, But it's not easy. Okay. It takes courage. It takes awareness. I've worked a long time on this. It used to be that I would go into a funk for freaking months if something like that happened before. And, it's not that way now. So the thing that's beautiful is that a lot of times we cause ourselves a whole bunch of disruption simply because we get reactive about something that's usually out of our control and definitely is not usually about what the thing is. Okay. In other words, there's something about my childhood or something about an occurrence in life that triggers me when someone is better or has more or so on and so forth. There's a competitive comparison there. And, part of the money thing is, as I'm sure, my dad was a school teacher. My mom worked in a pharmacy. We did not have a lot of money. And, for most of their lives, my parents didn't manage their money very well. So there were always fights in the house about money. And not having enough, and there not being enough, and then everybody that had money was a crook or a thief or a cheater, or the only way they make money is by conning people or taking advantage of them or whatever. I heard all kinds of shit about it. And so it took me a while to unwind a bunch of that shit. So I realized that when I start to deal with the trigger, when I deal with what happens when I get my buttons pushed, then I can look at, okay, I'm reacting to something that's way bigger than just this situation because the feelings that I'm having are not equal to the disruption. Okay. I'm way overreacting. So when I begin to analyze that, all of a sudden I take my eyes off the problem and I'm looking at myself, how I can get into a more resourceful or useful state. Because it's not useful to be all fucking pissed off and have your blood pressure go through the ceiling and feel like shit and then maybe even cause some problems. There was I used to sell janitorial supplies to large industrial companies. And there was a college that was one of my clients. And one of the engineers there, who used to order a bunch of stuff, was a young guy, and he had a family. I think one kid who was maybe 2-3 years old, and he and his wife were driving right in. It's funny because it was a religious college, and so I kind of figured that he was a lot of Lord and Jesus and stuff, and so I kind of figured that there would be different behavior. But basically, he's driving in front, coming out of work, and his wife had come to pick him up. So he's pulling out and he's going, and these young guys in one of these hot little street racer cars comes up, boom, pulls in front of him, slams on the brake, and they're laughing and high-fiving like, man, we really fucked this guy over. Yeah, we got in front of him. Big deal, right? Well, this guy got his buttons pushed, jumps out of the car, comes running up, screaming and yelling at these guys. The next thing you know, the driver of that hot little car rolls down his window, pulls out a gun, and shoots him in the chest 3 times and kills him. Now, we have to ask ourselves, was the reaction to getting his buttons pushed worth that? I'm thinking not. But these are the kind of things that can happen when we don't bring awareness to what pushes our buttons and how we respond to them. And we'll get into how we respond in the next podcast. I just want to stick with what's going on, with what happens in terms of what triggers you. Because if you can be aware of that, like I know when I'm driving and traffic is not letting me go 90 miles an hour, that I'm at risk for driving stupidly. So, or getting myself so wound up that I have a terrible day or I have a terrible drive, where I can usually turn that around. Okay. So really focus on understanding what hits you and then think about why. Okay. Why in the hell does it matter if this guy slows me down 15 seconds or 20 seconds? You know? And one of the things that I got to around that is that I can't do anything about it, and I feel helpless. I feel like I'm not able to control the situation when someone's in front of me. Whoops, sorry about that. My phone's talking to me. So anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. So the thing is, like, what are you reacting to? Is it worth it? What are you really reacting to? So most of the time, we're not really reacting to the guy that's in front of us on the freeway. Most of the time, we're responding to another situation that happened that was much bigger than that made us feel helpless, or that made us feel like there was injustice or some kind of helplessness that we couldn't control the situation. When we know that, then we go, oh, this obviously that situation needs some healing because this isn't big enough. For example, the guy that got triggered by jumping out of his car and yelling and screaming didn't deserve to get shot. That was crazy. And the guy who got his buttons pushed that pulled a gun out way overreacted to the situation. Okay. It wasn't like the guy had a gun and was coming after him and he was defending himself. It was unprovoked. All the engineer was doing was yelling and screaming at him. So you just keep your windows rolled up and look at the guy and say, get back in your car because you don't want anything bad to happen to you. And your wife and kids are way more important than being pissed off at me right now. So think about what it is that you're really pissed about. Think about what really is the core of getting your buttons pushed. And what you'll find is that all of a sudden the reality of your reaction comes into a completely different context. And you actually, even though you get bumped a little, like the guy with the GTS, I can go, oh, I got the loser syndrome. And it's not really true. And that's not really I can use this as motivation, as a reward for what happens when you pull off some really good, successful moves in business. I can use him as an inspiration rather than a threat, because he's not better or worse than me. He just has a really cool car. Okay. I'm very rational about that now, but there was a time in my life when I would go apeshit fucking crazy about that and feel like I might as well just go kill myself because I can never be as rich or as successful as that. I don't do that anymore. It's not helpful. So think about that. What triggers you? What pisses you off? What makes you react crazily? And then what's it really about? Take your time, think about it, write it down, journal it, and most importantly, no matter what you come up with, keep digging, keep healing, and keep looking up.